Remix has woken up and they've announced that Remix v3 is dropping React, and the plan is kind of awesome. Now I need to stress up front that React Router is not going anywhere. It's not going to become just Router, don't panic. Since most of the features and plans for Remix were merged into React Router v7, they now have time to build something entirely new. They have time to remix. So how did we get here, what's the plan, and why aren't you subscribed yet?
Yeah, it's rewind time.
We can't talk about Remix without mentioning React Router. React Router was and still is the go-to routing for React apps. Nearly every app I knew before Next.js and the newer frameworks used React Router. Version 5 was solid, v6 brought some controversial changes, but its fundamentals have always remained the same. It was created by Ryan Florence and Michael Jackson, and at some point they had seen enough implementations, they realized the React world had a problem. First, most apps ran poorly and they were all loaded in the client side and they didn't care about bundle size. Second, they didn't care for web fundamentals. And third, most apps loaded data in patterns that led to waterfall requests, race conditions, and inconsistent user experiences. And there were so many more issues that will be familiar to all of those of you that have been using React for a while. Everyone ended up building the same thing over and over, so they thought instead of teaching everyone the right way to do this, what if we just provide it? Initially, it launched as a framework with a paid license costing around $250, but they soon made it free and open source. Remix focused on web fundamentals, server-side rendering, and progressive enhancement. Remix v2 followed, but it eventually became such a thin wrapper around React Router that the teams realized they were maintaining an artificial separation between the two projects that were essentially ending up doing the same thing. So they made a very bold move. They merged everything that made Remix great directly into React Router v7. Now, people were a bit confused by this at first and wondered what Remix would become. The team said that it wasn't going to be abandoned, just that it was taking a nap. Well, now it's waking up and walking a new path, aiming to solve modern web dev complexity, creating a developer experience that feels lighter, faster, and more aligned with how the web works. But what does this actually mean? Well, it means dropping React. They want to start from scratch and own the full stack. To hit the ground running, they're actually going to be forking Preact. For those of you unfamiliar, Preact is a 3 KB alternative to React with the same modern API, but faster and lighter. But it's not just going to be a Preact fork. They have some key principles for this new remix. The first one is model-first development. They're optimizing everything for AI and LLMs, both for building apps and also for apps that use AI. This is a fascinating bet on the future of development, and I, for one, am very interested in this point. At the moment, it feels like we're just shoving AI into the old way of doing things. Someone building something that's new and AI native could be really powerful. I'm not even sure if anyone knows what model-first development looks like yet, so I'm fascinated to see that they're going to give this a go. The second principle is web API first, building on the web standards instead of being framework-specific abstractions. No more learning framework-specific patterns when web platform APIs already exist. This is something that Ryan and the Remix team have always tried to stress. The third one is religiously runtime. This is super interesting. They don't want any more complex build steps and bundler magic. Everything should work at runtime without pre-processing. And the next one is zero dependencies. They want to control their own destiny and not be locked into anyone else's roadmaps. This is why they're forking Preact and not just using it as a package. Think of this new version then as something entirely different. It just happens to use the same name. There is going to be no upgrade path from React Router or Remix v2. Here's a handy graph to visualize this journey. We start at React Router v5, which is succeeded by v6. Remix builds on top of v6 and launches Remix v1 and v2, while React Router stayed on v6. Then Remix v2 merges into React Router to become v7, and now Remix v3 is here, completely separate from any of these projects. It's a clean break. It just happens to be using the exact same name. So what do you think? Are you excited for a new web framework to enter the world? Do you think still using the Remix name is a little bit confusing? I personally think this team has a great track record of solving problems, so let's see what they can do when they're free to do what they want. We can all joke about React Router going through another breaking change rewrite, but do remember that technology should always be changing and improving. That is the fun of working in this space. React Router v7 is still there to handle all of your React full stack needs, and Remix v3 is free to explore what comes next in the world of web development. Subscribe, and as always, see you in the next one.